Characteristics of oral communication. When it comes to presenting, oftentimes we start off by thinking about how we feel about presenting. We wonder, am I smart enough? Do I know enough about this topic to fill the time? Do I just get nervous? I practice and I plan, but I'm still just nervous. Or do we just start to think, do I even know what I'm doing and how am I going to get through this? Well, we will get through it. And most people can learn how to, maybe even begin to enjoy and look forward to the opportunity of presenting. But it definitely takes some work. And lots of planning, plus a few tips and tricks along the way. So now let's think about what we don't want our presentations to be. Even though it's been modeled to us for the past few years, particularly in our college classes, our presentations that we will be doing as professionals in the field of public health aren't going to be the standard lecture at an audience, standing up in front of them, pointing to our PowerPoint slides, talking at them. It's not just going to be a lecture. But we also don't need it to be the big theatrical performance either. Instead, let's think of our presentations, educational presentations, as a conversation with our audience, a conversation enlarged. Think in terms of the characteristics that are involved with a typical conversation with a friend or a small group of friends. Take that and elevate it a bit. So when we consider the characteristics for oral communication, that's what we want to keep in mind. As our audience is looking at us and listening intently, whether they're sitting at tables in small groups, whether it's adults, whether it's adolescents, we want to consider ourselves, think about ourselves not just as the presenter lecturer, but instead the presenter facilitator. And again, how can we create an opportunity to have how to convey the information that we've prepared in our presentation in a more conversational way. So here are the images that I presented to you on the worksheet related to characteristics of oral communication. I'm curious what you thought of some of these in terms of what the picture represents, why this characteristic is important to oral communication, and suggestions for how we can improve it. So here we have eye contact. Sometimes that's the more difficult thing that a young presenter experiences. We get nervous. We can't look at them in their eyes. But there's some ways that we can convey that. We can look across the tops of their heads. We can look at their foreheads. We can look at their nose. But we want to convey that we want to be there, that there is a desire to be part of this educational process. Eye contact conveys that along with credibility, interest, and honesty. It also provides us an opportunity to assess our audience. Are they connecting with us? Are they bored? Are they confused? Are they dozing off? Are they doodling? Are they looking up at us, intrigued with what we're providing them? So how can we improve this? As I mentioned before, look at the tops of the heads or the forehead, look at the nose, vary your focus on different people. Every now and then I see someone and they think, I'm just going to focus on one person and I'll have great eye contact with them, but then the rest of the group is left out. So, eye contact. Here we have hand gestures. If you were to see me in class, you would find out that I am a hand talker. I have had to work very hard to reduce the distraction of my hand movement. So we want to strive for a natural but controlled hand movement. Nothing frenetic, nothing over the top. Again, trying to reduce distractions. So we have to think ahead of time. Where will we find our comfortable, quiet hand placement? Yes, we can use our hands to make a point. Maybe indicate, some exciting information, or, the audience had their aha moment, and we can reflect that with excitement. But we also need to make sure that we have the comfortable place, not necessarily in the pockets, not necessarily hands folded over our stomach or chest, but again, are they held together down in front? Are they just comfortably by our side, but keep the movement slow and steady and controlled? Here we have body posture and movement. In our presentations, if we were given the opportunity to stand behind the lecture stand, oftentimes people are gripping the sides, and we see the white knuckles, or they have their papers or note cards in front of them, again, gripping very tightly. Then they start to swing their leg or sway back and forth. That's not the kind of movement we want. We need to find, again, a comfortable place. I like to call it physically centered. If we're standing more on one foot and swinging another, we might lose our balance. If we crisscross our feet, again, then our stance is too narrow and we might start to sway back and forth. None of those work for us. With our movement, we also want to reduce distraction. We don't want to be leaning on the desk, leaning on the lectern, or pacing back and forth very nervously. We can use our space. Let's step in, lean in with our audience. If we have small groups working, walk over to the small groups to check on how they're doing. Ask them questions. It's fine to use our space to, again, allow ourselves to enter the space of the audience, to be a part of this larger conversation. Facial expressions. This one's interesting. Sometimes when people start to present, they forget that maybe they have a furrowed brow because of their nervousness, or they have a flat affect on their face, which makes it come across as if they are disinterested themselves with the presentation. They're bored. Well, that's the last thing we want to convey to our audience. Again, we want to convey to them a desire that we want to be there. It's fine to smile with your audience. At the beginning, when you're getting set up, and then you greet your audience, start with a smile. Sometimes we're also faced with a situation where we just need to put on our presenter's hat. Maybe we've had a difficult day and we're showing up to the 7 o'clock PTA meeting, and a lot has gone wrong with our day, but we need to put that aside, put on our professional presenter's hat, walk into that door, and be the presenter that we are trained to be. So sometimes that involves a little bit of faking it, but in this case, it's okay. And again, we want to be part of the experience with our audience, and that is also conveyed through our facial expressions. Yes, we cover some serious information, but sometimes there's something funny, and it's okay to laugh and to be ourselves. But just be aware that we don't have that flat affect on our face during our presentation. Voice, projection, rate, speed, volume, pitch, inflection, all of these things, variation in all of these aspects help us to avoid the monotonous tone. The last thing that we want for an hour and a half or longer with our audience is to just be monotone, clicking through PowerPoints, and all of a sudden all our audience hears is wah, 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 wah. We know what that's like. We know that we usually don't like that. So let's make sure that we avoid it as well. So, enunciation. Enunciation is the combination of articulation and pronunciation. Articulation is the ability to pronounce the letters of a word correctly, the letters and syllables, such as articulation. Pronunciation is when you can say the entire word correctly with flow. Okay? So the combination of articulation and pronunciation provide us with enunciation. Now, I know for myself, I have a tendency to drop the ing on words. I've attempted to change that, but it comes off a bit fake, and therefore usually I just go with it. But I do have to be very careful with my accent. Sometimes the way I pronounce words are different than someone else. I do check the proper pronunciation for words. That is something that we need to make sure that we do as well before we enter a presentation, particularly with some of the words that we deal with regarding physiological processes, anatomy, medications, other various substances. See, we need to make sure that we can enunciate clearly. The last thing that we want is to come upon a word in our presentation that we don't know how to enunciate correctly out loud. And in this case, one of the best things to do is to practice out loud while you're driving around, while you're washing dishes or doing any other chore. Practice your presentation out loud. You also want to try to find that conversational tone, but more also, as importantly, is the better we know our content, the better all of this comes together. And the last one is breathe. Breathing is kind of an important thing. I've seen students memorize a presentation for 6 minutes and they ramble straight through it, and I don't think they took one breath. And they sit down, whew, done, and they're breathing then. We cannot memorize and speed through a presentation for an hour. Prior to our presentation, let's put into practice the deep breathing relaxation skill that we've probably all learned. Center yourself. Get in the right mind frame. Take that breath. Center yourself physically. Look at your audience. Smile. Greet them. And step into your presentation. But along the way, we need to find or even build in specific places that offer us that opportunity to breathe and recenter during our presentation. Can you think of an easy way to do this? The easiest way to do this is to present your audience with a question. Bounce the ball to them. While they're thinking about it and answering, you get to take a breath. So when I mention interactive strategies, one of the best things about it is it gives you the opportunity to take a moment, and that can be really beneficial. So all of this hopefully will help us reduce feeling the way the presenters in these pictures feel. And it really comes down to planning. The more you have all of the details figured out for your presentation plan, and you know your content, and you know what question you're going to pose to the audience, and you know how you're going to transition from one point to the next, all of that planning helps you to then focus on these various characteristics of oral communication. You feel more confident in your work, so you're able to feel more comfortable with your audience and provide eye contact. You're going to be able to breathe more easily. You're not going to be frantically swinging your hands and your feet and twirling your hair or fiddling with the sleeve of your shirt. Planning makes such a difference. So as you keep in mind all the oral characteristics to oral communication, okay, think in terms of why we will be spending so much time on the details of planning your presentation. Make it a great day.